The thunder of hooves against packed dirt echoed through the valley as Tempest charged forward, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his gleaming black coat. The magnificent stallion moved with such perfect precision that he seemed to be gliding rather than galloping, each stride effortlessly devouring the ground beneath him. His rider, Marcus Calloway, leaned forward in perfect harmony, their silhouettes merging into a single unstoppable force as they crossed the finish line 3 full lengths ahead of their nearest competitor. The crowd erupted in cheers, though no one was truly surprised. Tempest had been undefeated for 2 straight seasons, 27 consecutive victories across the most prestigious equestrian competitions in the country. The horse that experts had once dismissed as too temperamental, too unpredictable, had become a living legend. As Marcus dismounted and led Tempest toward the winner's circle, cameras flashed and reporters jostled for position. The stallion's ears flicked backward and forward, acknowledging the commotion while remaining eerily calm, as if he understood that this celebration was for him. Another flawless performance, the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, Tempest and Marcus Calloway have done it again, maintaining their perfect record and setting a new course record in the process. Marcus smiled and waved, his weathered face betraying little emotion beyond a quiet pride. At 42, he'd spent more than half his life in competitive riding, but nothing had prepared him for the phenomenon that was Tempest. The stallion had transformed his solid but unremarkable career into something extraordinary. He patted Tempest's gleaming neck as they accepted the trophy, a gesture that to onlookers appeared casual but contained a depth of communication developed over their 5 years together. Few people knew the true story behind their partnership, a story of second chances, stubborn faith, and redemption that seemed almost too perfect for reality. 6 years earlier, Marcus had been at the lowest point of his career. After a devastating fall that shattered his leg in 3 places, most experts had written him off. Too old to come back, they said. His riding days were behind him. His wife had left him during his recovery, taking their savings and leaving behind only mounting medical bills. The prestigious Westbrook stables, where he had worked for 15 years, replaced him with a younger rider, despite his years of loyal service. With nothing left to lose, Marcus had used the last of his credit to purchase a temperamental 2-year-old destined for slaughter, a horse so difficult that 3 previous trainers had deemed him unrideable. The black stallion had been beautiful, but terrifying, with a wild look in his eyes that spoke of both intelligence and rebellion. "You're just misunderstood, aren't you?" Marcus had whispered during their first encounter, as the horse reared and snorted in his stall. "They don't know how to listen to you." What followed was a partnership forged through endless hours of patience. Unlike previous trainers who had tried to break Tempest's spirit through force, Marcus approached him with respect. He spent months just sitting near the stallion's stall, talking in a low, steady voice about his hopes, his failures, his dreams. Slowly, the horse began to trust him. Their training was unconventional. Marcus discovered that Tempest hated repetitive drills but thrived on variety and challenges. The stallion possessed an uncanny intelligence and seemed to understand exactly what was being asked of him, often before Marcus had fully communicated it. Their connection defied explanation. It was as if they could read each other's thoughts. Their first competition had been a small local event that Marcus entered simply to gauge how Tempest would handle the pressure. To everyone's shock, they won by a margin that left spectators speechless. Then came another victory, and another. Within a year, they were competing in national events, dismantling the competition with breathtaking ease. Now, as Marcus led Tempest back to the stables after their latest triumph, a reporter hurried alongside them. "Marcus, do you think anyone can beat Tempest? You've dominated every competition for 2 years straight." Marcus offered his standard modest smile. "Every streak eventually ends. We just take it one day at a time." But privately, he wondered. Tempest seemed to be getting stronger, faster, more intuitive with each passing competition. At 7 years old, the stallion was in his prime, with potentially many successful years ahead. Their competitors were becoming increasingly demoralized, some refusing to enter events when they knew Tempest would be there. Back at the stables, Marcus took extra time grooming Tempest, their post-victory ritual. As he ran the brush along the stallion's powerful flanks, he heard footsteps approaching. "Impressive performance today," came a smooth, confident voice. Marcus turned to see James Harrington, owner of Westbrook Stables, the same man who had fired him during his recovery. Harrington was impeccably dressed as always, his silver hair perfectly styled, his custom riding boots gleaming. "Thank you," Marcus replied simply, continuing to brush Tempest. "I've come with an offer," Harrington said, stepping closer. $2 million for Tempest. Right now. Cash. Marcus's hand paused momentarily before resuming its steady rhythm. "He's not for sale." $3 million then. Be reasonable, Marcus. That's more money than you'll see in your lifetime with competition winnings. Marcus turned to face Harrington directly. "You fired me when I was at my lowest. You said Tempest was a waste of money and effort. Now you want to buy what you were too short-sighted to see." He shook his head. "There isn't a number high enough, James." Harrington's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Nobody stays on top forever." After he left, Marcus leaned his forehead against Tempest's neck, drawing comfort from the stallion's steady presence. Harrington's words, though spoken out of spite, contained a kernel of truth. Nobody stayed on top forever. But for now, they seemed unbeatable. What Marcus didn't know was that across the country, a very different kind of competitor was emerging. One who would challenge not just their winning streak, but everything Marcus thought he knew about horsemanship and competition. Alexandra Chen had never intended to become a professional rider. As the daughter of Chinese immigrants who ran a small restaurant in rural Kentucky, her earliest experiences with horses had been purely accidental. When she was 8, her school bus broke down near a small farm, and while waiting for a replacement, she had wandered over to the fence where a gentle mare grazed peacefully. The farm's owner, an elderly woman named Ruth Jenkins, had spotted Alexandra's fascination and invited her to come back any time. Those visits became regular, and soon Ruth was teaching the eager young girl everything she knew about horses. Alexandra displayed a natural talent that even Ruth found remarkable. "You have a gift," Ruth told her one day after watching Alexandra calm a notoriously difficult gelding. "The horses speak to you, and more importantly, you listen." By the time Alexandra was in high school, she was helping Ruth train horses for local competitions. Her parents, though initially concerned about the time she spent away from her studies, eventually recognized and supported her passion when they saw how it transformed their shy daughter into a confident young woman. Alexandra's approach to training was unique. While most competitive riders focused on dominating their mounts, she formed partnerships based on mutual respect and understanding. Her methods were sometimes criticized as too soft, too slow, but the results spoke for themselves. Horses that had been deemed problematic flourished under her guidance. Now, at 28, Alexandra had established herself as a respected trainer in Kentucky's competitive riding community. However, she remained largely unknown on the national circuit, until a chance encounter changed everything. When Ruth passed away, she left Alexandra her most precious possession, a powerful copper-colored mare named Phoenix. The horse had exceptional bloodlines, but had never competed due to an injury as a foal that left her with a slight irregularity in her gait. Most trainers would have seen this as a disqualifying flaw, but Alexandra saw something else entirely. "We all have our imperfections," she whispered to Phoenix during their first training session. "But that doesn't define what we can achieve." Using a revolutionary training approach that worked with Phoenix's unique movement rather than against it, Alexandra developed a style that transformed the mare's slight irregularity into an advantage. Phoenix moved differently than other horses, but her unconventional gait actually allowed for greater efficiency over certain types of terrain. No one expected much when Alexandra registered Phoenix for her first regional competition, but when they took first place, people started paying attention. 3 more victories followed in quick succession, each more impressive than the last. And now, as Marcus and Tempest celebrated their latest victory, Alexandra was quietly preparing for her national debut, a competition where their paths would finally cross, though neither yet knew how profoundly this meeting would change both their lives. The morning air was crisp as Alexandra led Phoenix through their warm-up routine. Dawn had barely broken over the Kentucky hills, painting the landscape in soft pinks and golds. This early hour was Alexandra's favorite time to train, before the stables became busy, before the weight of the day settled on her shoulders. Just her and Phoenix, moving together in perfect harmony. "That's it, girl," she murmured as the mare responded to the slightest pressure of her legs. "Beautiful." Phoenix's copper coat gleamed in the early light, her muscles rippling beneath the surface. Despite the slight irregularity in her gait, or perhaps because of it, the mare moved with a fluid grace that Alexandra had never seen in another horse. It was as though Phoenix had invented her own way of moving through the world, refusing to be limited by conventional expectations. From the fence, Alexandra's father watched with a mixture of pride and concern. Wei Chen had closed the restaurant for the day, something he rarely did, to help his daughter prepare for her journey. The National Equestrian Championships in Virginia would be Alexandra's first competition at this level, and the entire family understood its significance. "Your form is perfect," Wei called out in his accented English, "but remember to save some energy for the actual competition." Alexandra smiled and guided Phoenix toward the fence. "We're just warming up, Dad. Besides, Phoenix knows when to conserve her strength. She's smarter than most people I know." Wei handed his daughter a thermos of tea. "Your mother packed enough food for a month. She thinks they don't have Chinese food in Virginia." "Tell her I appreciate it," Alexandra said, taking a sip of the jasmine tea. "Are you sure you can manage the restaurant while I'm gone? I could still ask May to go with Phoenix instead." "Nonsense," Wei interrupted. "Your assistant is good, but this is your moment. Your mother and I didn't come to this country for you to send someone else to live your dream." His expression softened. "Ruth would have wanted you there yourself." At the mention of her mentor, Alexandra felt a familiar pang of grief. Ruth had passed away just 6 months ago, leaving Phoenix and the small training facility to Alexandra. Every victory since then had been bittersweet, celebrated with the acute awareness of Ruth's absence. "I know," she said quietly. "I just worry about leaving you both with all the work." "We managed before you were born. We can manage for a week," Wei said with a dismissive wave. "Now, what was that jump combination you were practicing? The timing seemed off." Alexandra laughed. Despite having no background with horses before his daughter's involvement, Wei had become remarkably knowledgeable about equestrian sports, often studying videos late into the night so he could offer informed feedback. As they discussed the technical aspects of the upcoming course, Alexandra's phone buzzed with a notification. She pulled it from her pocket and frowned at the screen. "What is it?" Wei asked. "The competitor list for the championship was just released," Alexandra replied, scrolling through the names. "And guess who's headlining? The famous one with the black horse? Marcus Calloway and Tempest," she confirmed. 27 consecutive victories. They're practically celebrities in the equestrian world. Wei studied his daughter's expression. "Does this change your strategy?" Alexandra tucked the phone away and patted Phoenix's neck. "No, we've always been outsiders, Dad. No one expects us to win. That's our advantage." She smiled. "Besides, even champions can be beaten." Her confidence was genuine, but so was her respect for the challenge ahead. Alexandra had studied videos of Tempest's performances obsessively. The stallion was magnificent, powerful, precise, with an almost supernatural connection to his rider. But she had also noticed patterns, tendencies that might be exploited by someone observant enough to spot them. "Phoenix has something Tempest doesn't," she told her father as they walked back to the stables. "Heart. That horse runs for glory, for victory. Phoenix runs for me, for us. That makes all the difference." Meanwhile, across the country, Marcus was facing his own pre-competition rituals. The day after their latest victory, he had risen before dawn to work with Tempest, not on jumps or speed drills, but on the fundamentals, the building blocks that had formed the foundation of their success. "Basics win competitions," he often told aspiring riders who came to watch them train. "Flashy techniques might impress the crowd, but perfect fundamentals impress the judges." As they completed their morning session, Marcus noticed a sleek black car pulling up to the training facility. A woman in an impeccable business suit emerged, her heels clicking purposefully as she approached the fence. "Mr. Calloway," she called out, "do you have a moment?" Marcus guided Tempest toward her, immediately recognizing the logo on her portfolio. Equinox Sportswear, one of the largest equestrian equipment manufacturers in the world. "Vanessa Porter," she introduced herself, extending a manicured hand. "I'm the marketing director for Equinox. We've been following your incredible success with Tempest." "Thank you," Marcus replied, dismounting to shake her hand. "What can I do for you?" "I'll get straight to the point. Equinox wants to offer you an endorsement deal, $2 million for a 2-year contract. Exclusive equipment use, appearances at our events, your face on our advertising campaigns. Tempest would become the official face of our new premium line." Marcus blinked, momentarily stunned by the figure. $2 million would set him up for life, would ensure Tempest had the best care long after his competition days were over. It was the kind of financial security he'd never imagined possible. "I appreciate the offer," he said carefully, "but I'd need to review any contract thoroughly. Tempest's well-being is my priority." Vanessa smiled. "Of course. We wouldn't dream of interfering with your training regimen or pushing Tempest beyond his limits. In fact, that connection, that care you show, it's exactly what we want to associate with our brand." She handed him a thick folder. "All the details are in here. We'd need your answer before the national championships next week. A victory there, extending your streak to 28, would be the perfect moment to announce our partnership." After she left, Marcus sat on a bale of hay, absently flipping through the contract while Tempest grazed nearby. The money was staggering, but something about the timing troubled him. The pressure of maintaining their winning streak was already intense. Adding the weight of a major endorsement deal felt like tempting fate. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his younger sister, Emma. "Hey, big brother," she said when he answered. "I was just calling to see if you've got room for one more supporter at the national championships. Josh has a school trip, so it'll just be me this time." Marcus smiled. Emma had never missed one of his major competitions, often driving hours with her teenage son to cheer him on. During the darkest days of his recovery, she had been the one constant presence, the one person who never doubted he would ride again. "I always have room for you," he said. "But are you sure you can get away from the store?" Emma ran a small bookshop in their hometown, a business that was perpetually on the edge of solvency. "Lisa can cover for me. Besides, how often does my brother get to go for 28 straight wins? This is history in the making." "Don't jinx it," Marcus laughed, though her words echoed his own thoughts. Each victory added to the pressure, to the sense that they were building towards something unprecedented, or toward an inevitable fall. "Have you seen the competitor list?" Emma asked. "Anyone look threatening?" "Not really," Marcus admitted. "Most of the usual suspects, though there is one new entry I don't know much about. Alexandra Chen with a mare named Phoenix. They've been dominating the regional circuit in Kentucky. Should you be worried?" Marcus watched as Tempest raised his head, ears forward, alert to something in the distance. "We never underestimate any competitor," he said. "But Tempest is in peak form. It would take something extraordinary to beat us right now." What neither Marcus nor Alexandra could have anticipated was how their first meeting would unfold. Not on the competition field, but in a chance encounter that would reveal more about each other than any professional profile ever could. And it would happen even before the first event of the championships began, setting the stage for a rivalry unlike any the equestrian world had ever seen. The Ridgewood Equestrian Center in Virginia was a sprawling complex of stables, practice rings, and competition fields spread across 300 acres of gently rolling countryside. For 1 week each year, it transformed into the epicenter of the equestrian world as riders from across the nation gathered for the national championships. Alexandra arrived 2 days before the competition began, giving Phoenix time to acclimate to the new surroundings. As her trailer pulled through the main gates, she couldn't help feeling intimidated by the scale of everything: the immaculate white fences, the perfectly manicured grounds, the massive grandstands that would soon be filled with thousands of spectators. "It's bigger than I imagined," she told May, her assistant, as they guided the trailer toward their assigned stable. May nodded, her eyes wide. "And look at those trailers. They're nicer than my apartment." Alexandra had to agree. Their modest trailer was dwarfed by the custom-designed transportation units of the more established competitors. Some even featured the riders' names and sponsors emblazoned on the sides. By contrast, hers bore only the simple logo of Ruth's training facility, a phoenix rising above the words, "Second Chance Stables." As they unloaded Phoenix, Alexandra noticed the curious glances from nearby stable hands and competitors. She was clearly an outsider here, unknown, unexpected, easy to dismiss. The copper mare seemed to sense her rider's tension, nudging Alexandra gently with her nose. "I know, girl," Alexandra whispered. "We belong here just as much as they do." After settling Phoenix into her stall, Alexandra decided to walk the competition course. Understanding the terrain intimately was part of her meticulous preparation routine. The course wouldn't be fully set up until the next day, but she could get a feel for the ground, the distances, the way the light fell across the field. The main arena was empty when she arrived, the jumps stored at the edges, waiting to be arranged into the challenging configuration that would test the country's best riders. Alexandra closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the course as it would be, visualizing Phoenix clearing each obstacle with her distinctive fluid motion. "First time at Nationals?" The voice startled her. Alexandra turned to find a man standing a few yards away, his weathered face kind but evaluating. She recognized him immediately, Marcus Calloway, Tempest's rider. In person he was taller than she'd expected, with the lean, wiry build of a lifelong equestrian. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples, and fine lines around his eyes spoke of years squinting against the sun. "Is it that obvious?" she asked, straightening her posture instinctively. He smiled, the gesture transforming his serious expression. "You have that look, taking it all in, trying to memorize every detail. I did the same my first time here." He extended his hand. "Marcus Calloway." "Alexandra Chen," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "But I suppose you knew that." "I make it a point to know all my competitors," he acknowledged. "Your rise through the regionals has been impressive. 4 straight victories with a mare that most trainers would have overlooked." Alexandra felt a surge of pride that Marcus Calloway, the Marcus Calloway, had taken notice of her accomplishments. "Phoenix is special," she said simply. "Special horses find special riders," he observed, his gaze thoughtful. "What brought you to the sport, if you don't mind my asking? Your path seems unconventional." The question caught her off guard. Most conversations in this world began and ended with training techniques, bloodlines, and competition strategies. Personal histories were rarely discussed. "I fell in love with horses by accident," she admitted. "My school bus broke down near a farm when I was 8. The owner, Ruth Jenkins, became my mentor. She left me her training facility when she passed away last year." Marcus nodded, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Ruth Jenkins. I met her once, years ago. Brilliant horsewoman. Unorthodox methods that raised plenty of eyebrows, but she understood horses on a level few achieve." He looked at Alexandra with renewed interest. "She must have seen something remarkable in you." "She gave me a chance when no one else would," Alexandra said, unexpected emotion tightening her throat. "Like Phoenix, I didn't fit the traditional mold. My parents immigrated from China, ran a restaurant. We had no connections, no money for lessons. Ruth taught me everything I know." "And now you're here," Marcus said, challenging the established order. Something in his tone made Alexandra wonder if he was referring to himself, to Tempest's undefeated streak that she and Phoenix threatened to break. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the nearby stables. Shouts of alarm and the unmistakable sound of a panicked horse cut through the air. Without hesitation, both riders sprinted toward the noise. They rounded the corner to find a chestnut gelding rearing in terror, having somehow escaped his stall. 2 stable hands were attempting to corner him, which only intensified his panic. "Back off!" Alexandra called to the handlers, who looked at her in confusion but complied. Marcus moved to the left, understanding her intention without words. They positioned themselves at strategic points, not advancing, not retreating, creating a calm presence that gave the frightened animal space to settle. Alexandra began humming softly, a Chinese lullaby her mother had sung to her as a child. The unusual sound caught the gelding's attention. His ears flicked forward, nostrils flaring as he assessed this new development. "That's it," she murmured, maintaining the melody between words. "No one's going to hurt you." Gradually, the horse's breathing slowed. He lowered his head slightly, though his muscles remained tense, ready to flee at the slightest provocation. "He's listening," Marcus said quietly. "Keep doing what you're doing." Alexandra took a slow step forward, then another, still humming. The gelding watched her, but didn't retreat. When she was within arm's reach, she extended her hand, palm down, and waited. After what seemed like an eternity, the horse stretched his neck forward and touched his nose to her fingers. "Good boy," she whispered, gently taking hold of his halter. As the stable hands reclaimed the gelding, his owner appeared, a young woman whose pale face revealed her fear. "Thank you," she said breathlessly. "Thunder's never done anything like that before. Something must have spooked him." Marcus and Alexandra exchanged a glance. They'd both noticed the gelding's reaction was extreme for a simple scare. "May I?" Alexandra asked, gesturing toward Thunder. At the owner's nod, she ran her hands along the horse's neck and withers, checking for any sign of injury or irritation. When she reached his back, just behind the saddle area, Thunder flinched visibly. "Here," Alexandra said. "Something's bothering him here." Marcus stepped closer, his experienced eyes confirming her assessment. Could be a muscle strain, or... He leaned in, examining the area more carefully. "There's something caught in his coat. See that tiny burr?" Alexandra spotted it, a minuscule seed pod nestled deep in the horse's coat, its barbed exterior causing discomfort every time the saddle position shifted. "Such a small thing to cause so much distress," the owner said as Marcus carefully removed the burr. "That's often the way with horses," Alexandra replied. "They feel everything so intensely." As the situation resolved, Marcus turned to Alexandra with newfound respect in his eyes. "That was impressive. Most riders would have gone for a lead rope and force. Your approach was different. Not force, partnership," she said. "That's how Ruth taught me. Understanding before action." Marcus studied her for a moment longer than necessary, as if reassessing everything he'd initially assumed about this newcomer. "Well, Alexandra Chen, I think the national championships just got more interesting." He offered his hand again. "May the best team win." As she shook his hand, Alexandra felt a curious mix of emotions: admiration for this legend of their sport, determination to prove herself against the best, and an unexpected connection that transcended their competitive status. What neither of them realized as they parted ways was that their brief collaboration had been witnessed by numerous competitors and staff, including James Harrington, whose calculating eyes had missed nothing of the encounter. By evening, the story of how the unknown Alexandra Chen and the legendary Marcus Calloway had worked in perfect harmony to calm a panicked horse was circulating throughout the Ridgewood Equestrian Center. The narrative of the upcoming competition was already shifting, evolving from a foregone conclusion of Tempest's 28th victory into something far more unpredictable, a clash of philosophies, generations, and approaches to the ancient partnership between human and horse. And somewhere in that emerging story lay the seeds of a transformation that would change both riders in ways neither could yet imagine. The eve of competition brought with it a nervous energy that permeated the entire Ridgewood complex. Stables buzzed with last-minute preparations, riders reviewed course maps with intense concentration, and trainers delivered final instructions in hushed, urgent tones. The first event, cross-country, would begin at 9 the following morning, setting the initial rankings that would carry through to the jumping and dressage components. Alexandra stood in Phoenix's stall, methodically brushing the mare's copper coat until it gleamed in the soft, stable light. The repetitive motion calmed them both, a meditation of sorts that helped clear Alexandra's mind of distractions. "You ready for tomorrow, girl?" she murmured, leaning her forehead briefly against Phoenix's neck. The horse snuffled softly in response, her breath warm against Alexandra's arm. "Looks like she is," came a female voice from outside the stall. Alexandra turned to see a slender woman with short gray hair and intelligent eyes watching them. She wore a national championship staff badge that identified her as Dr. Eleanor Wells, head veterinarian. "Just doing our evening ritual," Alexandra explained, continuing the brushing. "Phoenix likes consistency." Dr. Wells nodded approvingly. "Most horses do, though yours has quite the reputation already. The mare with the irregular gait who outperforms purebreds with perfect conformation." She tilted her head curiously. "May I?" Alexandra nodded, and the veterinarian entered the stall. With practiced hands, she ran her fingers along Phoenix's legs, paying particular attention to the left foreleg that caused the mare's distinctive movement. "Fascinating," Dr. Wells murmured. "An old injury." "From birth," Alexandra explained. "The tendon never developed quite right. Most trainers said she'd never compete." The veterinarian straightened up, her eyes bright with professional interest. "Yet here she is at nationals. You've clearly found a way to work with her physiology rather than against it. That's rare in this sport, where conformity to ideal standards is so prized." She gave Phoenix a final pat. "I've been watching this competition for 30 years, Ms. Chen. It's refreshing to see innovation rather than just technical perfection." After Dr. Wells departed, Alexandra reflected on her words. Innovation versus technical perfection. It seemed an apt description of the contrast between her approach and that of competitors like Marcus Calloway. Tempest was the embodiment of technical excellence, executing every movement with textbook precision. Phoenix, by necessity, had to find her own way, adapting traditional techniques to accommodate her unique gait. "We make our differences our strength," Alexandra told Phoenix, echoing Ruth's words from years ago. Across the complex, Marcus was engaged in his own pre-competition routine. He sat on a bench outside Tempest's stall, methodically cleaning tack that was already immaculate. The familiar smell of saddle soap and leather centered him, pushing away the growing pressure of expectation. 28 consecutive victories. The number had become both badge and burden. Each win added to Tempest's legend, but also to the weight of maintaining their perfect record. Sometimes, in moments of private honesty, Marcus wondered what it might be like to lose, to have the pressure suddenly lifted. But such thoughts were quickly banished. They hadn't come this far, overcome so many obstacles to surrender their crown willingly. "Quite the entourage you've acquired," Emma observed, appearing beside him with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to her brother and sat down. "I counted 3 journalists, a documentary crew, and at least a dozen sponsors hovering around your stable today." Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. Price of success. Everyone wants a piece when you're winning. "And when you're not?" Emma asked, raising an eyebrow. "Then you can't get people to return your calls," he replied with a wry smile. "I remember those days too well to take any of this for granted." Emma studied her brother's face, noting the subtle lines of tension around his eyes. "Have you thought any more about the Equinox offer?" Marcus set down his polishing cloth. "I told them I'd decide after the competition. $2 million would secure our future, provide for Tempest's retirement." He trailed off, staring at the stable wall. "But," Emma prompted. "But it feels like I'd be selling something that can't be bought," he admitted. "This connection with Tempest, the purity of what we've built together. Once it becomes about endorsements and advertisements, doesn't it change everything?" Emma placed a hand on his arm. "Only if you let it. You've never compromised Tempest's welfare before. I don't see you starting now, contract or no contract." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted from the end of the stable aisle. James Harrington's voice rose above the general murmur, sharp with irritation. "This is unacceptable," he was saying to a harried-looking stable manager. "I specifically requested stalls away from the main thoroughfare. Diamante needs absolute quiet before competition." Marcus and Emma exchanged glances. Harrington's prize stallion, Diamante, was one of Tempest's few serious rivals, having placed second behind them in multiple competitions. The Spanish Andalusian was a magnificent animal with tremendous talent, though many believed his potential was limited by Harrington's rigid, controlling approach. "Some things never change," Marcus murmured. "James still treats this place like his personal kingdom." Emma snorted. "As if Diamante cares which stall he's in. That horse would perform beautifully if he were kept in a cardboard box. It's Harrington who needs the luxury accommodations for his ego." Marcus hushed her with a smile, though he privately agreed. His former employer's obsession with status and appearances had always struck him as contrary to the true spirit of horsemanship. As if sensing their conversation, Harrington turned, his gaze falling on Marcus. The older man's expression shifted from irritation to calculated assessment. "Calloway," he called, striding toward them. "Just the man I wanted to see." Marcus rose, instinctively positioning himself slightly in front of Emma. "James, what can I do for you?" Harrington stopped a few feet away, immaculate in his tailored riding clothes despite the late hour. "I heard about your little demonstration yesterday with the Chen woman. Quite the double act, apparently." "We helped calm a frightened horse," Marcus replied evenly. "Hardly a demonstration. Nevertheless, you made quite an impression, the newcomer and the champion, working in perfect harmony." Harrington's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I hope you haven't forgotten what's at stake tomorrow. 28 victories would set a record that might stand for decades. I'm well aware of the statistics." Harrington lowered his voice. "My offer still stands. 4 million now. After you win tomorrow, the price goes back to 3. I know when to recognize superior bloodlines, Marcus. Tempest belongs at Westbrook Stables for his remaining competition years and his subsequent breeding career." Marcus felt a familiar anger stirring. "And my answer remains the same. Tempest isn't for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone." "Sentimentality is expensive," Harrington said with a cold smile. "But I admire your loyalty, misplaced though it may be." He glanced toward the far end of the stable where Alexandra could be seen leading Phoenix on an evening walk. "Your new friend has caused quite a stir. The oddsmakers have her placed third, behind you and Diamante. Impressive for an unknown with a physically compromised mount." "Alexandra Chen has earned her place here," Marcus replied, his tone sharpening. "As has Phoenix." Of course," Harrington said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I merely find it interesting that you seem so supportive of a competitor who threatens your historic streak. Perhaps the pressure of maintaining perfection is finally getting to you." After Harrington departed, Emma let out a low whistle. "That man could give masterclasses in passive-aggressive manipulation. What did you ever see in working for him?" "Westbrook had the best facilities, the best horses, the best opportunities," Marcus answered, his eyes still on Harrington's retreating back. "Until my accident, I thought that was enough." Later that night, unable to sleep, Marcus found himself walking the empty practice ring under a canopy of stars. The grounds were quiet now, most competitors having retreated to rest before the demanding day ahead. As he rounded the far corner, he was surprised to see a solitary figure sitting on the top rail of the fence, Alexandra Chen, gazing up at the night sky. She turned at his approach, offering a small smile of recognition. "Insomnia before competition? I thought that was just a rookie problem." "Veterans get it worse," Marcus replied, leaning against the fence beside her. "Too many memories of things that went wrong in the past." They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that can exist only between people who share a deep understanding of a common passion. "Why Phoenix?" Marcus asked eventually. "With your talent, you could have trained any horse. Why choose one with such an obvious disadvantage?" Alexandra's expression softened in the starlight. "Because she chose me. The moment I saw her, I recognized something. a determination, an intelligence that transcended her physical limitations. She looked directly at Marcus. Everyone deserves a second chance to become what they're meant to be. Phoenix. Me. She paused. You too, after your accident. Marcus felt strangely exposed, as if she had glimpsed something he rarely revealed. Tomorrow we're competitors, he said quietly. Yes, Alexandra agreed. But tonight we're just two people who understand what it means to form a partnership with an extraordinary animal, to communicate without words, to become something greater together than we could ever be apart. As they parted ways, each returning to their own horses and their own preparations, neither could have articulated the complex emotion that lingered between them. Respect layered with curiosity, admiration tempered by competitive drive, and beneath it all, a recognition of a kindred spirit that transcended their differences. Dawn broke over Ridgewood with a spectacular array of pinks and golds, as if nature itself was acknowledging the significance of the day. By 7 o'clock, the grounds were alive with activity. Grooms leading horses for early morning walks, riders reviewing course maps one final time, officials making last-minute adjustments to the cross-country obstacles. The cross-country course stretched over 4 miles of Ridgewood's varied terrain, featuring 30 jumps of increasing difficulty. Water obstacles, ditches, banks, and tight turns would test both horse and rider's courage, stamina, and precision. Unlike the controlled environment of stadium jumping, cross-country demanded adaptability and split-second decision-making. Alexandra stood at the starting point an hour before competition began, committing the course to memory one final time. Phoenix was back at the stables with May, being prepared for their 10:45 a.m. start time, positioned squarely in the middle of the competition order. "Visualizing your victory," came Harrington's voice from behind her. Alexandra turned, surprised to find Westbrook's owner observing her with unconcealed curiosity. "Mr. Harrington, good morning." "Please, James," he insisted with practiced charm. "I've been watching your preparation with interest. Most unusual, your methods." Alexandra maintained a neutral expression. "Different horses require different approaches." "Indeed. And your mare's particular physiology certainly demands creativity." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I wonder, though, if creativity is enough at this level. Nationals rewards technical perfection, not improvisation." Before Alexandra could respond, he continued, "You know, Westbrook is always looking for innovative trainers. Someone with your unique perspective might find opportunities there, regardless of today's outcome." The implication was clear. He was suggesting that even if she lost, there could be a place for her at his prestigious stables. Alexandra wasn't sure whether to be flattered or insulted by the presumption. "I'm not looking for opportunities," she replied evenly. "Second Chance Stables is where I belong." Harrington's expression cooled slightly. "Loyalty to a modest training facility left to you by your mentor is admirable. But ambition shouldn't be constrained by sentiment." He glanced at his watch. "I should check on Diamante. He competes just before you. Perhaps you'll see what technical perfection truly looks like." As he walked away, Alexandra fought the urge to call after him with a retort. Instead, she turned her attention back to the course, refusing to let Harrington's subtle intimidation affect her focus. By 10 o'clock, the competition was well underway. Early riders had posted respectable times, though none had completed the course without at least minor penalties. Marcus and Tempest were scheduled to start at 11:30, the favorable position a reflection of their champion status. Alexandra returned to the stables to find Phoenix fully tacked and ready, May fussing over final details. The mare's coat gleamed in the morning light, her copper color especially vibrant against the green and white of Alexandra's competition outfit. "She knows it's a big day," May said, adjusting a strap. "Hasn't taken her eyes off the door since dawn, like she's been waiting for you." Alexandra approached Phoenix, running a hand along the mare's strong neck. "We've prepared for this," she whispered. "No matter what happens, we belong here." At precisely 10:43, Alexandra mounted Phoenix and walked her to the starting area. As they approached, she noticed the crowd's reaction, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, as spectators observed Phoenix's distinctive gait. Whispers rippled through the gathering. "That's the mare with the defect. How did she even qualify? They say she outran purebreds with that limp." Alexandra blocked out the comments, focusing instead on the connection between her and Phoenix. She could feel the mare's muscles tense beneath her, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. Phoenix understood competition. She thrived on it. The starter's countdown pulled Alexandra back to the present moment. Rider 15, Alexandra Chen on Phoenix. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! They burst from the starting line with surprising power, Phoenix's uneven gait transforming into a fluid, rhythmic gallop that seemed to defy conventional biomechanics. The first 3 jumps were straightforward, designed to build confidence, and they cleared them with elegant precision. "Look at that approach," someone in the crowd exclaimed. "It's unorthodox but effective." As they progressed deeper into the course, the challenges intensified. The 4th obstacle required a sharp turn, followed by a leap over a wide ditch. Phoenix adjusted her stride perfectly, anticipating Alexandra's subtle cues. By the halfway point, they were making excellent time. The water complex, typically the most intimidating section, loomed ahead. Alexandra felt Phoenix hesitate momentarily at the sight of the glimmering pool. "Trust me," she murmured, applying gentle pressure with her legs. Phoenix's ears flicked back, catching her rider's voice, and without further hesitation, she plunged into the water, navigated the complex with precision, and emerged on the other side without losing momentum. The crowd's response was audible even from a distance, surprise giving way to admiration. This unusual pair was not merely competing, they were excelling. The final stretch featured the most technically demanding jumps, designed to test horses already fatigued from the long course. Alexandra felt Phoenix drawing on hidden reserves of energy, responding to each command with unwavering trust. They crossed the finish line at a full gallop, stopping the clock at a time that placed them solidly in second position among the riders who had completed the course so far. The announcer's voice boomed across the grounds. "Alexandra Chen and Phoenix complete with a time of 8 minutes 24 seconds with 0 penalties. That puts them in provisional second place with several top competitors still to come." As she guided Phoenix back toward the stables, Alexandra caught sight of Marcus near the starting area, already mounted on Tempest. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Competitor to competitor, professional to professional. 45 minutes later, Alexandra stood with the crowd watching Marcus and Tempest attack the course. Their performance was nothing short of masterful. Tempest moved with machine-like precision, his powerful stride devouring the terrain. Marcus rode with the confidence of experience, making difficult maneuvers look effortless. "That," murmured a spectator near Alexandra, "is what perfection looks like." And yet, as she observed more closely, Alexandra noticed something unexpected. For all their technical brilliance, there was a mechanical quality to Tempest and Marcus's performance, an execution so flawless it almost seemed rehearsed rather than responsive to the course's unique challenges. They crossed the finish line to thunderous applause, posting a time of 8 minutes 12 seconds, 12 seconds faster than Alexandra and Phoenix, securing provisional first place. The final significant competitor was James Harrington on Diamante. The Spanish Andalusian was a picture of classical beauty, moving with the distinctive elevated action of his breed. Harrington rode with rigid precision, his expression stern as he guided Diamante through the course. Their performance was impressive but not flawless. A slight hesitation at the water complex and a tight turn that forced them to adjust their approach to a vertical jump cost precious seconds. They finished with a time of 8 minutes, 20 seconds, placing them third behind Tempest and Phoenix. By late afternoon, with all riders having completed the course, the standings were official. Tempest in first, Phoenix in second, Diamante in third. The margin between first and second was narrow enough to leave the overall championship very much in contention, with dressage and stadium jumping still to come. The surprise of the day was undoubtedly Phoenix's performance. What had begun as whispers of curiosity had transformed into conversations of admiration. The mare with the irregular gait had proven herself against the nation's elite. As Alexandra led Phoenix back to her stall after a thorough cool-down, she found Marcus waiting, Tempest already settled for the evening. "Impressive ride," he said simply. "You two have a connection I've rarely seen." "Thank you," Alexandra replied. "Your performance was everything your reputation promised." Marcus smiled, a hint of something, weariness, uncertainty, in his eyes. "Tempest doesn't know how to do anything but win. It's all he's ever done." "Until tomorrow, perhaps," Alexandra suggested, surprising herself with her boldness. Instead of taking offense, Marcus laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to release some of the tension he carried. "Perhaps, though he might have something to say about that." He turned to leave, then paused. "Your approach to the water complex, the way you communicated with Phoenix before she committed. I noticed that. It was intuitive. That's what Ruth taught me. Horses understand more than we credit them for. They deserve to be partners, not just vehicles for our ambition." Marcus nodded slowly, as if considering her words carefully. "I'd like to hear more about Ruth's methods sometime, after the competition." "I'd like that," Alexandra replied, surprised to realize how much she meant it. As he walked away, Alexandra felt a curious mixture of competitive fire and personal connection. Tomorrow would bring dressage, the discipline that most rewarded the technical precision at which Tempest excelled. Yet somehow, the challenge ahead filled her with anticipation rather than dread. Win or lose, she and Phoenix had already proven they belonged among the elite. What she couldn't know was that their performance had done more than impress the crowd. It had planted a seed of doubt in Marcus Calloway's mind, a question about the nature of perfection that would continue to grow in the hours to come. The dressage arena gleamed under the morning sun, its pristine white boundaries forming a perfect rectangle against the verdant backdrop. Unlike the wild energy of cross-country, dressage demanded control, precision, and subtle communication between horse and rider. Every movement was scored on a scale that rewarded technical excellence and classical form, qualities that had made Tempest nearly unbeatable in this discipline. Alexandra sat on a bench outside Phoenix's stall, studying the dressage test one final time. The sequence of movements was challenging. Extended trots, collected canters, flying changes, and pirouettes that would test the limits of Phoenix's unique physiology. "Nervous?" May asked, approaching with 2 cups of steaming tea. "Realistic," Alexandra replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "Dressage favors horses with textbook gaits. Phoenix has never scored as highly here as in the other disciplines." She sipped the jasmine tea, its familiar scent reminding her of home. "But we've been working on adapting the movements to showcase her strengths rather than emphasize her differences." May nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Your father called this morning. He and your mother are watching the live stream at the restaurant. He said all the regular customers are there too, cheering for you." Alexandra smiled at the image. Her parents' small restaurant filled with locals gathered around a laptop, watching their daughter compete on the national stage. It was a world away from the polished, privileged environment of Ridgewood, yet their support felt more genuine than all the corporate sponsorships and professional entourages that surrounded the other competitors. "I should get ready," Alexandra said, finishing her tea. "Phoenix competes in 2 hours." As she walked toward the practice ring for their warm-up, Alexandra passed the dressage arena where early competitors were already performing. She paused to watch a rider on a gray Lipizzaner execute a near-perfect half-pass. The horse moved with the elevated, precise action that judges favored, earning appreciative murmurs from the gathering crowd. "Beautiful, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. Alexandra turned to find Dr. Wells, the head veterinarian, standing beside her. "The technical mastery is impressive," she agreed. "But?" Dr. Wells prompted, hearing the reservation in her tone. Alexandra hesitated, careful not to sound critical of her fellow competitors. "It's flawless execution," I just sometimes wonder if we've created a sport that values conformity over character." The veterinarian's eyes crinkled with amusement. A controversial view in these circles, yet not without merit. She nodded toward the rider, now performing an extended trot. "Notice how the communication flows only one way, rider to horse. The best partnerships I've seen involve genuine dialogue." "Like Tempest and Marcus," Alexandra observed. "Yes, though even they—" Dr. Wells trailed off, then smiled diplomatically. "Well, every partnership has its own dynamics. I look forward to seeing you and Phoenix perform. Your approach is refreshing." As the veterinarian departed, Alexandra spotted Marcus leading Tempest toward the practice ring. The black stallion moved with his characteristic power and grace, his coat gleaming like polished obsidian. Marcus, dressed in formal dressage attire, walked with the focused intensity of a man preparing for battle. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. Marcus offered a slight nod, his expression unreadable, before continuing toward the ring. Something about his demeanor seemed different today, a tension that hadn't been present during cross-country. Alexandra's warm-up with Phoenix went smoothly. The mare was responsive and focused, executing the practice movements with growing confidence. Alexandra had modified several elements to accommodate Phoenix's irregular gait, transforming what might have been perceived as a weakness into a distinctive style that caught the eye. By the time their turn arrived, a substantial crowd had gathered. Word of Phoenix's surprising cross-country performance had spread, drawing spectators curious to see if the copper mare could maintain her position against more established competitors. "Rider number 15, Alexandra Chen on Phoenix," the announcer called. Alexandra guided Phoenix into the arena with steady hands and a clear mind. They halted at center, saluted the judges, and began their test. The first movements, a collected walk transitioning to an extended trot, established their rhythm. Phoenix's unique gait created a flowing quality that, while not textbook perfect, possessed an undeniable harmony. The crowd watched in fascinated silence as horse and rider moved as one through the complex patterns. When Phoenix executed a particularly challenging pirouette, transforming her irregular stride into a controlled, graceful turn, spontaneous applause erupted from the spectators. As they completed the final centerline and halt, Alexandra felt a surge of pride. They had performed at the absolute peak of their abilities. Whether or not the judges appreciated their unconventional approach, she knew Phoenix had given everything. The scores, when announced, placed them fourth in the dressage phase. Respectable, though not exceptional. Combined with their second-place finish in cross-country, they remained solidly in contention for an overall medal, particularly if they performed well in tomorrow's stadium jumping. James Harrington and Diamante performed next, executing a technically precise test that earned marks just below the leaders. The Spanish Andalusian's classical training was evident in every movement, though observers noted a certain stiffness in the horse's response to his rider's commands. By mid-afternoon, the arena had filled to capacity for the appearance of Tempest and Marcus. As they entered, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by appreciative murmurs. Even standing motionless at the center, they commanded attention, the epitome of competitive excellence. Their test began flawlessly. Tempest's movements were precise, powerful, and perfectly timed to the subtle cues from his rider. The extended trot showcased his tremendous stride. The collected canter demonstrated his balance and control. Yet as Alexandra watched from the sidelines, she noticed something unexpected. Moments of hesitation, almost imperceptible breaks in the fluidity that had characterized their previous performances. It was as if Tempest was anticipating commands rather than responding to them, creating a millisecond of disconnect between rider and horse. The judges didn't miss these minute imperfections. When the scores were announced, Tempest and Marcus had placed first in dressage, but by a narrower margin than anyone had predicted. The invincible streak suddenly seemed less certain. As competitors and spectators dispersed, Alexandra found herself drawn to the quiet area behind the stables where water buckets were filled. There, to her surprise, she encountered Marcus, his formal jacket removed, splashing water on his face. He looked up, drops clinging to his eyelashes. "Congratulations," he said simply. "Fourth in dressage with a horse that most would have considered unsuitable for the discipline. That's remarkable." "Thank you," she replied, "though I expected better from Tempest." He seemed distracted. Marcus dried his face with a towel, his expression troubled. He was. For the first time in years, he wasn't fully with me out there. He hesitated, then added quietly, "I think he might be bored." "Bored?" Alexandra echoed, surprised by his candor. 27 consecutive victories. The same movements performed with the same precision. No challenges, no surprises. Marcus leaned against the water trough. "After watching you and Phoenix yesterday, the way you communicate, adapt, solve problems together, I realized what's been missing. Tempest executes commands perfectly, but when was the last time I asked for his opinion?" The vulnerability in his admission caught Alexandra off guard. This was the champion whose techniques she had studied, whose success she had aspired to challenge. Yet here he was, questioning the very foundation of his approach. "It's never too late to change," she offered. "Ruth always said horses remember kindness longer than they remember commands." A small smile crossed Marcus's face. "Your Ruth sounds like she was quite the philosopher." "She was," Alexandra agreed. "Though she would have said she was just a woman who listened to horses." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Vanessa Porter from Equinox Sportswear, her heels clicking purposefully against the concrete. "Marcus, there you are?" she said, barely acknowledging Alexandra's presence. "The media is waiting for interviews, and we need to discuss the contract before tomorrow's final phase. $2 million is generous, but after today's performance, we should address expectations moving forward." The implication was clear. The sponsorship's value was tied to Tempest's continued dominance, which suddenly seemed less assured. Marcus straightened, the momentary openness vanishing behind his professional facade. "I'll be there in a minute, Vanessa." After she departed, an awkward silence fell between them. The intimacy of their conversation had been shattered by the intrusion of business and competition. "I should check on Phoenix," Alexandra said finally. "Alexandra," Marcus called as she turned to leave. "Tomorrow's stadium jumping will decide everything. Whatever happens, it's been an honor competing against you." She nodded, understanding the complex emotion behind his words. Likewise, as she walked away, Alexandra reflected on the curious situation in which she found herself, forming a genuine connection with her chief rival, admiring his mastery while simultaneously working to overthrow his dominance. And beneath it all, a growing sense that their competition represented something larger than either of them had anticipated. A clash between tradition and innovation, between perfection and authenticity. Tomorrow's final phase would determine not just the national champion, but perhaps the future direction of the sport itself. Dawn on the final day of competition brought unexpected weather, gray clouds gathering on the horizon, promising rain by midday. Grooms and riders hurried to prepare, knowing that wet conditions would transform the meticulously designed stadium jumping course into an even greater challenge. Alexandra woke early, her dreams filled with jumps and time clocks and the rhythmic sound of Phoenix's hooves. She dressed quickly and made her way to the stables, where she found May already brushing Phoenix's coat to a copper sheen. "Morning," May said, her voice hushed in the pre-dawn quiet. "How did you sleep?" "I didn't," Alexandra admitted. "Kept running the course in my head." After yesterday's results, the standings had tightened dramatically. Tempest still led, but by a margin slim enough that today's performance would be decisive. Phoenix stood in third overall, with Diamante between them. A clean round with a fast time could change everything. Alexandra ran her hand along Phoenix's neck, feeling the strong muscles beneath the gleaming coat. "Today's our day, girl," she whispered. "No matter what happens, we've already proven them wrong." Across the complex, Marcus stood alone in Tempest's stall, methodically checking every piece of tack with the focus of a man trying to control the only variables he could. The stallion watched him with alert eyes, occasionally nudging his shoulder as if offering reassurance. "We've never been challenged like this before," Marcus told him quietly. "Not really. Every victory came so easily that I stopped appreciating what you give me." He rested his forehead against Tempest's neck. "Whatever happens today, I promise things will be different between us." The stallion's ears flicked forward at the sound of approaching footsteps. Emma appeared in the stall doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you might need this," she said, offering one to her brother. "The weather report says rain within the hour." Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. "Complicates things." "For everyone," Emma pointed out, "including your competition." Marcus took a sip, savoring the bitter warmth. "I spoke with Alexandra Chen yesterday, about Tempest, about my approach." He shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure why I did that." Emma studied her brother thoughtfully. "Because she sees horses differently. And maybe after 27 victories, you're ready for a different perspective too." "Vanessa called this morning," Marcus said, changing the subject. "Equinox is getting nervous. They've revised their offer downward, 1.5 million now. Apparently my stock drops with every fraction of a point we lose." And I told her I'd decide after today's competition. The money would secure our future, Emma. Your bookstore, Tempest's retirement, maybe even a small training facility of my own. Emma placed a hand on his arm. "But at what cost? These corporate sponsors don't care about your relationship with Tempest. They care about wins and marketability." Before Marcus could respond, a stable hand appeared. "Mr. Calloway, they're calling riders for course inspection in 10 minutes." The stadium jumping course was a technical masterpiece. 14 obstacles including a triple combination, a water jump, and several tight turns that would test even the most responsive horses. With the rain now falling steadily, bright colors gleamed against the gray sky as riders walked the course, measuring strides and memorizing angles. Alexandra moved methodically, counting steps between jumps, visualizing Phoenix's approach to each obstacle. She knew the mare's irregular gait would be both challenge and advantage, less predictable on turns, but capable of unexpected acceleration on straightaways. As she studied the triple combination, 3 jumps in quick succession that would require perfect timing, she became aware of Marcus standing nearby, similarly absorbed in analysis. "The distance between the second and third element is tight," he observed without preamble. 5.5 strides for most horses. Awkward. Alexandra nodded. "Phoenix will need to adjust after the second jump. Her stride length varies on her left lead." They continued discussing the course, 2 competitors sharing professional observations without guarding their insights. The conversation flowed naturally until they were interrupted by James Harrington, who approached with a camera crew in tow. "Sharing strategies, Marcus?" Harrington asked, his tone light but his eyes calculating. "How generous of you to mentor a newcomer." Marcus's expression cooled. "Ms. Chen hardly needs mentoring, James. She's more than proven herself." The camera crew captured the exchange with obvious interest, the veteran champion, the upstart challenger, and the wealthy, stable owner creating an irresistible narrative. "Indeed she has," Harrington agreed smoothly. "In fact, I was just telling the National Equestrian Journal that this competition has become much more unpredictable than anticipated. Tempest's dominance suddenly seems less assured." The barb was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but Alexandra spoke before he could respond. "Every competition is unpredictable, Mr. Harrington. That's why we ride the course instead of just discussing it." She turned to Marcus. "Good luck today." "You too," he replied, their eyes meeting in mutual understanding before she walked away. By the time the competition began, the rain had intensified. Stadium lights cast an artificial glow over the arena, and spectators huddled under umbrellas, unwilling to miss the dramatic conclusion to 3 days of world-class competition. Riders with lower standings went first, many struggling with the slippery conditions. Rails fell, time penalties accumulated, and the leaderboard remained fluid as each performance reshuffled the rankings. Alexandra and Phoenix were scheduled to go third from last, followed by Harrington and Diamante, with Marcus and Tempest as the overall leaders, taking the final slot. As she prepared Phoenix in the warm-up ring, Alexandra could feel the mare's energy, alert but controlled, eager but focused. When their turn came, Alexandra guided Phoenix into the arena with steady hands and a clear mind. The rain had eased slightly, but the footing remained treacherous. They paused at the entry, Alexandra taking a deep breath as the buzzer signaled their start. What followed was a masterclass in communication. Phoenix tackled each jump with controlled power, her irregular gait forgotten in the fluidity of their shared purpose. The triple combination, which had troubled many competitors, they navigated with intuitive adjustments, Phoenix seeming to understand exactly what was needed without explicit direction. As they cleared the final oxer and crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted. The scoreboard flashed their result, a clear round with no penalties, and a time that put them firmly in first place with only 2 competitors remaining. May met her at the exit, face radiant despite the rain. "That was incredible. No one's gone clear until now." Alexandra dismounted, patting Phoenix's neck with trembling hands. She was perfect. Absolutely perfect. James Harrington and Diamante entered next. The Andalusian was magnificent, his white coat dramatic against the gray backdrop, but Harrington's rigid style became their undoing at the triple combination. Diamante, responding to his rider's tense commands, took the second element too close, clipping the top rail. 4 penalty points added to their time placed them behind Alexandra and Phoenix. And then it was time for Marcus and Tempest, the final performance, with everything at stake. Alexandra found herself holding her breath as they entered the arena, the black stallion's coat gleaming like liquid shadow under the lights. From the first fence, it was clear something had changed. Marcus rode with a lighter hand, allowing Tempest more freedom than in previous competitions. The stallion responded with renewed energy, attacking the course with both precision and joy. It was as if a barrier had dissolved between them, the mechanical perfection of yesterday transformed into something more organic, more alive. They cleared obstacle after obstacle, their time competitive, but not desperate. As they approached the triple combination, the challenge that had determined so many fates today, Alexandra found herself silently urging them on. Tempest gathered himself for the first element, soared over it, landed, took 2 strides to the second jump, cleared it, and then something extraordinary happened. Instead of immediately preparing for the third element, Marcus gave Tempest the slightest freedom with the reins. The stallion, sensing the opportunity, adjusted his own stride and approach, sailing over the final element with room to spare. The crowd gasped, then cheered. It was a moment of perfect trust between horse and rider. Marcus allowing Tempest to solve the problem himself, rather than dictating every motion. They finished with a clear round and a time just fractions of a second slower than Alexandra and Phoenix, enough to maintain their overall lead by the narrowest of margins. Tempest and Marcus Calloway had secured their 28th consecutive victory, but in a manner no one had anticipated. As rain continued to fall and spectators cheered, Alexandra felt a complex mixture of emotions. Disappointment at coming so close to victory, pride in Phoenix's extraordinary performance, and an unexpected appreciation for the evolution she had witnessed in Marcus and Tempest's partnership. What no one in the arena yet realized was that this competition had forever changed both the victor and the runner-up, in ways that would soon reshape the entire sport. The awards ceremony took place in Ridgewood's Grand Pavilion, hastily moved indoors due to the persistent rain. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the gathering of competitors, officials, sponsors, and media. 3 podiums stood at the front of the room, the center one slightly elevated for the champion, flanked by platforms for second and third place. Alexandra stood on the left podium, the silver medal cool against her palm as cameras flashed. To her right, Marcus occupied the champion's position, gold medal gleaming against his formal attire. On the third podium, James Harrington maintained a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Please join me in congratulating our national championship medalists. In first place, with his 28th consecutive victory, Marcus Calloway and Tempest. The applause was thunderous, spectators rising to their feet in recognition of the historic achievement. Alexandra joined in sincerely, acknowledging the excellence she had witnessed. In second place, in a remarkable national championship debut, Alexandra Chen and Phoenix. The reaction surprised her, the applause nearly as enthusiastic as it had been for Marcus. She had arrived as an unknown outsider but had somehow captured the audience's imagination with Phoenix's unconventional journey. And in third place, James Harrington and Diamante. After the formal presentations, the pavilion transformed into a reception. Sponsors circulated with checkbooks barely concealed. Journalists cornered riders for quotes, and trainers dissected performances in hushed analytical tones. Alexandra found herself surrounded by people who had barely acknowledged her existence 3 days earlier. Breeders wanted to discuss Phoenix's lineage, equipment manufacturers offered endorsement opportunities, and rival stables hinted at coaching positions. "You've become quite the celebrity," May observed, appearing at her side with 2 flutes of champagne. Alexandra accepted one gratefully. "Apparently silver is the new gold," she quipped, though the attention made her uncomfortable. "How's Phoenix?" Settled in her stall with an extra portion of alfalfa. She earned it. May nodded toward a cluster of photographers across the room. "Your father called again. He said the restaurant is throwing a celebration party tomorrow night. The whole town is coming." The thought of returning to Kentucky, to the small, supportive community and the modest training facility, filled Alexandra with sudden longing. Despite the glamour of Ridgewood, she missed the authenticity of home. "Ms. Chen," came a smooth voice from behind her. "A moment of your time?" She turned to find Vanessa Porter from Equinox Sportswear, elegant in a tailored suit despite the long competition day. "Equinox is expanding its ambassador program," Vanessa explained without preamble. "Your performance this weekend, particularly your innovative approach with Phoenix, has caught our attention. We'd like to discuss a potential partnership." Alexandra blinked in surprise. "I'm flattered, but the initial offer would be in the range of $500,000 for a 1-year contract," Vanessa continued. "Exclusive equipment use, quarterly photo shoots, social media content." The figure was staggering, enough to renovate Ruth's aging facilities, hire additional staff, even expand their training program to more rescue horses. Yet something in the corporate calculation behind the offer gave Alexandra pause. "I appreciate your interest," she said carefully, "but I'd need time to consider any proposal, particularly how it might affect Phoenix and our training approach." Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, though I should mention that several other brands have expressed interest as well. The marketplace moves quickly after a breakthrough performance like yours." She handed Alexandra a business card. "Call me when you're ready to discuss details." As Vanessa departed, Alexandra caught sight of Marcus across the room, surrounded by reporters and photographers. Despite standing in the center of attention, he seemed strangely isolated, his responses to questions polite but reserved. Their eyes met briefly over the crowd, and Alexandra was struck by the complexity of his expression, pride in their achievement tempered by something deeper, more questioning. Then James Harrington appeared at his side, and the moment passed. Later, as the reception began to thin, Alexandra stepped outside onto the pavilion's covered veranda. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a fresh, earthy scent and a landscape washed clean. She breathed deeply, clearing her head of the pavilion's perfumed air and carefully modulated conversations. "Escaping the circus?" Marcus asked, joining her at the railing. "Just needed some air," she replied. "Congratulations, by the way. 28 victories is extraordinary." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you, though today's win felt different from the others." "I noticed," Alexandra said. "That moment at the triple combination, you gave Tempest the freedom to make his own decision." "I did," Marcus confirmed, a hint of wonder in his voice. "After all these years, all these victories, I finally trusted him to solve a problem himself. He turned to face her directly. That was because of you. Watching you and Phoenix, the way you communicate, the partnership you've built, it made me question everything about my approach. Alexandra hadn't expected such candor. We each find our own path with our horses, she offered. There's no single right way. But there are better ways, Marcus insisted. I've spent years pursuing technical perfection, treating Tempest like a finely tuned machine rather than a thinking, feeling partner. Today, when I gave him that moment of freedom, I felt something I haven't experienced in competition for a very long time. Joy. The confession hung between them, weighted with implication. Before Alexandra could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway. There you are, she called to her brother. Vanessa's looking for you. Something about signing the contract tonight while the media's still here. Marcus's expression clouded. Tell her I'll be there in a minute. After Emma retreated, an awkward silence fell between them. The mention of the Equinox contract had reintroduced the reality of their professional lives, the business of equestrian competition that existed alongside the pure connection between human and horse. $2 million, Marcus said quietly, answering Alexandra's unasked question. For exclusive representation rights. That's substantial, she replied, thinking of the $500,000 Vanessa had offered her. A quarter of Marcus's value in the sponsor's calculation. It is, he agreed. Enough to secure Tempest's future, to start my own training program. He hesitated. But after today, I'm not sure what that program would teach. Everything I thought I knew about horsemanship has been called into question. Alexandra leaned against the railing, considering her response carefully. Ruth used to say that doubt is the beginning of wisdom, that the moment we think we have all the answers is the moment we stop growing. Marcus smiled at that. Your Ruth sounds like someone I would have liked to know. She would have liked you too, Alexandra said, surprising herself with the certainty of it. Especially after what I saw today. That wasn't just a technical victory. It was a breakthrough in trust. Their conversation was interrupted by the pavilion doors opening again, this time revealing Vanessa herself, contract folder visibly clutched in one hand. Marcus, the media is waiting, she said, her tone professionally pleasant, but edged with impatience. This is the perfect moment to announce our partnership. He straightened, duty calling him back to the world of sponsors and expectations. I should go. Of course, Alexandra said. As he turned to leave, Marcus paused. I meant what I said earlier. You've changed how I see this sport, how I work with Tempest. Whatever happens next, I won't forget that. After he disappeared inside, Alexandra remained on the veranda, processing the unexpected evolution of their relationship from competitors to something more complex. Mutual respect layered with a growing personal connection. She wondered what Ruth would have made of Marcus Calloway, of Tempest, of this entire unexpected journey. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She turned, expecting May, but instead found James Harrington watching her with calculated interest. Quite the Cinderella story, he observed, joining her at the railing. The unknown rider with the physically compromised horse, winning silver at her first nationals. Phoenix earned that medal, Alexandra replied, bristling slightly at his characterization. Indeed she did, Harrington agreed smoothly, which makes my offer all the more appropriate. $5 million for Phoenix. Right now. Alexandra stared at him in shock. What? $5 million, he repeated. Far above market value, even for a medal winner. You could build a world-class training facility with that amount. Rescue dozens of horses like Phoenix. She's not for sale, Alexandra said firmly, echoing Marcus's words from days earlier. Harrington's smile didn't waver. Everyone has a price, Ms. Chen. If $5 million doesn't interest you, perhaps we should discuss what would. He withdrew a business card from his pocket. Consider it carefully. Opportunities like this are rare in our sport. As he walked away, Alexandra remained motionless, the business card untouched on the railing beside her. The parallel to Marcus's situation with Tempest wasn't lost on her. Another wealthy offer, another attempt to separate rider from horse. But beneath that similarity lay a disturbing question. Why was Harrington so determined to acquire Phoenix? Dawn broke over Ridgewood on the day after the championship, finding the grounds transformed. Where yesterday there had been crowds and competition, now there was the methodical dismantling of temporary structures. Grooms led horses to trailers, riders packed equipment, and the transient community that had formed over the past week prepared to disperse. Alexandra sat on a hay bale outside Phoenix's stall, watching May organize their modest collection of tack and supplies. Their trailer was scheduled to depart at noon, beginning the long journey back to Kentucky and the small training facility that awaited them. $5 million, May whispered for the third time that morning, still processing Harrington's offer. That's life-changing money, Alex. It is, Alexandra agreed, absently braiding a piece of Phoenix's mane. But Phoenix isn't mine to sell. Not really. What do you mean? Ruth left her to you legally. Alexandra smiled softly. There's legal ownership, and then there's something deeper. Phoenix chose me as much as I chose her. We found each other when we both needed a second chance. She looked up at her friend. How could I put a price on that? May nodded, understanding despite her practical nature. What about the Equinox offer? $500,000 doesn't compromise your partnership with Phoenix. The sponsorship proposal had occupied Alexandra's thoughts throughout the night. The money would transform their operation, allowing her to help more horses like Phoenix. Yet she couldn't shake the memory of Vanessa Porter's calculating assessment, the sense that she and Phoenix were being valued solely for their marketability. I'm still considering it, she said finally. But if we accept, it needs to be on terms that respect what we're trying to build, not just another commercial relationship. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Wells, the head veterinarian, making her final rounds before departure. Just checking in on our silver medalist, she said warmly, entering Phoenix's stall. How's she feeling after yesterday's effort? Ready for home, Alexandra replied, watching as the vet ran expert hands over Phoenix's legs, paying particular attention to the irregular left foreleg. No additional strain from the competition, Dr. Wells confirmed, straightening up. You've managed her condition beautifully. Most riders would have pushed too hard, too fast, but you've found exactly the right balance. Thank you, Alexandra said, touched by the professional validation. That means a lot. Dr. Wells hesitated, then spoke in a more confidential tone. I shouldn't say this, but your approach with Phoenix has sparked quite the debate among the championship committee. Some are arguing that we need to reconsider how we evaluate partnerships like yours, ones that transcend traditional standards of technical precision. Really, Alexandra hadn't expected their performance to have broader implications. Really, the veterinarian confirmed. For too long, this sport has rewarded a narrow definition of excellence. You and Phoenix have reminded everyone that there are other ways to achieve greatness. She smiled. I hope to see you both next year. After Dr. Wells departed, Alexandra remained thoughtful, considering the unexpected ripples their participation had created. Ruth would have been pleased, she thought. Her mentor had always believed that changing minds was as important as winning ribbons. Across the grounds, Marcus stood in Tempest's stall, methodically grooming the stallion one last time before their departure. The routine was familiar, comforting, a private ritual that had marked the end of every competition for years. There you are, Emma said, appearing in the doorway. Vanessa's been looking everywhere for you. She's not happy. Marcus continued brushing Tempest's gleaming coat. I imagine she isn't. You didn't sign the contract, Emma stated, rather than asked. No. $2 million, Marcus. Her tone was neutral, not judging, merely clarifying. He set down the brush and faced his sister. It would have locked us into another 2 years of the same approach. The technical perfection, the pressure to maintain the streak, Tempest as a performance machine rather than a partner. He shook his head. After what happened yesterday, I can't go back to that. Emma studied her brother, noting the certainty in his expression, a clarity that had been missing in recent months despite their continued success. So what now? I don't know exactly, Marcus admitted, but it starts with giving Tempest time to just be a horse for a while. No competitions, no pressure. Then we rebuild our approach on a different foundation. A commotion outside interrupted their conversation. Raised voices coming from the direction of the main stable block. Marcus and Emma exchanged concerned glances before heading toward the noise. They arrived to find a tense scene unfolding outside Phoenix's stall. James Harrington stood flanked by 2 lawyers and a stable manager, facing Alexandra and May. A small crowd of grooms and riders had gathered, drawn by the confrontation. "This is completely unethical," Alexandra was saying, her voice steady despite the flush of anger on her cheeks. "You can't just file an injunction to prevent us from taking Phoenix home." "I assure you, Ms. Chen, everything is quite legal," Harrington replied smoothly. "The documentation from your mentor's estate shows irregularities that merit review. Until ownership is properly established, Phoenix should remain in neutral custody." Marcus pushed through the onlookers, immediately grasping the situation. "What's going on here?" Alexandra turned to him, relief flickering briefly across her face. "Mr. Harrington is attempting to prevent Phoenix from leaving Ridgewood. He's claiming there are questions about my legal ownership." "Which is absurd," May added. Ruth left everything to Alexandra. "The paperwork is clear." One of Harrington's lawyers stepped forward, document folder in hand. "We've uncovered evidence suggesting that the transfer was never properly completed. Ms. Jenkins may have intended to leave the mare to Ms. Chen, but intention is not legally binding without proper execution." Marcus's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "This is about your offer being rejected, isn't it, James? $5 million wasn't enough, so now you're trying another approach." Harrington's expression remained impassive. "This is about ensuring proper legal procedures are followed, nothing more." "Bull," Emma interjected, earning surprised looks from several bystanders. "You've never cared about proper procedures unless they served your interests." The stable manager, clearly uncomfortable with his role in the confrontation, shifted his weight nervously. "Mr. Harrington has filed the paperwork with the championship committee. They've asked that Phoenix remain on the grounds until a hearing can be arranged." Alexandra felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. Legal battles were expensive and time-consuming, exactly what their small operation couldn't afford. More importantly, they would separate her from Phoenix during a critical bonding period after their shared success. "When would this hearing take place?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "The committee meets next month," the manager replied. "Until then?" "Until then, Phoenix stays at Ridgewood," Harrington finished, satisfaction evident despite his professional demeanor. "Don't worry, Ms. Chen. She'll receive the finest care. You're welcome to visit, of course." The calculated cruelty of the offer, allowing her to visit her own horse, struck Alexandra like a physical blow. Before she could respond, Marcus stepped forward. "That won't be necessary," he said firmly, "because Phoenix will be coming to my facility." All eyes turned to him in surprise. "As a championship medalist, I have standing to request temporary custody pending resolution," Marcus continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. "My property is less than 2 hours from Ridgewood. The committee can inspect Phoenix at any time, and Ms. Chen will have daily access." One of the lawyers frowned. "Mr. Calloway, this is highly irregular." "So is attempting to separate a rider from her horse through dubious legal maneuvering," Marcus countered. "I'm sure the equestrian press would find that story fascinating." The implied threat hung in the air. Harrington's carefully cultivated public image wouldn't survive the negative publicity of being seen bullying a newcomer, especially one who had captured the public's imagination as Alexandra had. After a tense silence, Harrington nodded curtly. "Fine. Phoenix can stay with Mr. Calloway until the hearing, but this changes nothing about our legal position." He turned to leave, adding over his shoulder, "The committee will contact you with details." As the crowd dispersed, Alexandra turned to Marcus, emotions warring on her face. Gratitude, confusion, concern. "Why did you do that?" Marcus met her gaze directly. "Because it was the right thing to do." and because I understand what Phoenix means to you." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "The same thing Tempest means to me." In that moment of shared understanding, something shifted between them, a deepening of the connection that had been building since their first encounter. No longer merely competitors or even colleagues, they recognized in each other a fundamental truth about the bond between human and horse that transcended the usual boundaries of their sport. "Thank you," Alexandra said simply. As they stood there, surrounded by the dismantling of the championship that had brought them together, neither could have predicted how their impulsive decision would transform not only their own futures, but the future of equestrian sport itself. For in joining forces against Harrington's manipulation, they had inadvertently created a partnership that would challenge the very foundations of competitive horsemanship. 1 year later, the grounds of Callaway Chen Training Center buzzed with activity as riders and horses prepared for the annual showcase event. The facility, once Marcus's modest private stable, had been transformed into a thriving educational center that attracted equestrians from across the country. Alexandra stood at the center of the main arena, watching as a young rider guided a chestnut mare with a visibly twisted hind leg through a series of gentle exercises. The girl's face shone with concentration as she applied the principles Alexandra had taught her, working with her horse's unique physiology rather than against it. "Beautiful," Alexandra called out as they completed the pattern. "Notice how she's finding her own rhythm? You're giving her the freedom to solve the problem her way." The rider beamed, patting the mare's neck affectionately before leading her out of the arena. As they exited, Marcus entered from the opposite side, Tempest walking beside him with the relaxed demeanor of a horse completely at ease in his environment. "The Parker girl has made remarkable progress," he observed, coming to stand beside Alexandra. 3 months ago, she was ready to give up on Melody entirely. "She just needed to understand that different isn't deficient," Alexandra replied. "Once she stopped trying to make Melody move like other horses, everything changed." Marcus nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "A lesson many of us could stand to learn earlier." He glanced at his watch. "The committee members should be arriving soon. Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," she said, brushing dust from her riding jacket. "It's not every day you get to rewrite the rules of a century-old sport." The past year had been a whirlwind of change. What had begun as a temporary arrangement, Phoenix staying at Marcus's facility during Harrington's legal challenge, had evolved into an unexpected partnership. Alexandra had initially commuted daily to work with Phoenix, but as weeks passed, their collaboration deepened. They discovered their approaches complemented each other perfectly, Alexandra's intuitive understanding of horses with physical differences balanced by Marcus's technical expertise. When the championship committee finally ruled in Alexandra's favor, aided by unexpected testimony from Dr. Wells regarding Harrington's suspicious interest in Phoenix's genetics, the foundation of their partnership was already solid. Rather than returning to Kentucky, Alexandra had accepted Marcus's proposal to create something new together, a training center dedicated to an evolved approach to horsemanship. "There they are," Marcus said, nodding toward the entrance where 3 figures in formal attire approached, the National Equestrian Federation's Rules Committee, arriving to observe the innovative training methods that had caused such controversy in traditional circles. The committee's visit represented the culmination of months of advocacy. After witnessing Phoenix's success, despite her irregular gait, other riders had begun questioning the rigid standards that had governed competition for generations. The Callaway Chen approach, emphasizing partnership over domination, adaptation over conformity, had gained enough traction that the Federation could no longer ignore it. "Miss Chen, Mr. Callaway," greeted the committee chair, extending his hand. "We're looking forward to seeing these new methods in action." "And we're honored by your interest," Marcus replied. "We've prepared demonstrations with several horses, each representing different challenges to conventional training." The showcase unfolded throughout the afternoon. Riders of varying experience levels demonstrated how horses with conditions once considered disqualifying could perform beautifully when approached with understanding rather than force. Between demonstrations, Alexandra and Marcus explained their philosophy, emphasizing that their goal wasn't to lower standards, but to expand them, to recognize excellence in all its forms. The centerpiece of the event, however, was the final demonstration. As the golden late afternoon light filled the arena, Alexandra rode Phoenix while Marcus rode Tempest in a choreographed duet that highlighted both traditional excellence and innovative adaptation. The Copper Mare and the Black Stallion moved in perfect harmony despite their different gaits, Phoenix's distinctive rhythm and Tempest's powerful precision complementing each other in a performance that transcended conventional dressage. Where traditional competition would have penalized Phoenix's movement, this showcase celebrated it as part of a more authentic expression of partnership between horse and rider. When they finished, the silence that followed spoke volumes. The committee members exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of surprise and reluctant admiration. "Impressive," the chair finally said, "though I'm still not certain how these principles could be objectively judged in competition." "Perhaps that's the point," Alexandra suggested. "Maybe we need to expand our definition of what competition measures, not just technical execution, but the quality of communication, the degree of mutual trust, the horse's engagement as a willing partner, rather than a trained performer." Later, after the committee had departed with promises to consider their proposals, Alexandra and Marcus sat on the stable's covered porch, watching as the sun set over the rolling pastures where Phoenix and Tempest now grazed together. "Do you think we convinced them?" Alexandra asked, cradling a mug of tea between her hands. "Some of them," Marcus replied. "Change comes slowly in this world, but it does come." "It's hard to believe how much has changed in a year," she mused. "Sometimes I wonder what Ruth would think of all this." Marcus smiled. "I think she'd be proud. Not just of what you've accomplished with Phoenix, but of how you've challenged an entire system to be better." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their horses in the distance. The unlikely friendship between Phoenix and Tempest had been one of the surprises of the past year. The irregular mare and the champion stallion forming a bond that mirrored their riders' evolving relationship. "I received another offer from Harrington yesterday," Marcus said suddenly. $6 million for Tempest. He's apparently building a new breeding program focused on genetic excellence." Alexandra raised an eyebrow. And I told him what I've told him every time. Tempest isn't for sale." He paused. "Though I think he's finally starting to believe me." "It's strange," Alexandra reflected. "A year ago, I thought winning was everything, that Phoenix and I needed a medal to prove we belonged. Now I realize the medal was just the beginning of something much more important." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in vivid oranges and purples. In the pasture, Phoenix and Tempest moved closer together, their silhouettes merging against the twilight backdrop. "We did make history, though," Marcus said softly. "Just not in the way either of us expected." Instead of 28 consecutive victories, Marcus would now be remembered for something more profound, the champion who questioned the very nature of championship, who stepped away from competition at the height of his success to help reshape the sport he loved. And Alexandra, the outsider who had arrived with a physically compromised horse and revolutionary ideas, had found that her greatest contribution wasn't a silver medal, but a fundamental challenge to what excellence in horsemanship truly meant. "The next national championships will be interesting," she said. "With the new adaptive division and the modified scoring system, we might see horses competing that would never have had the chance before." "And riders," Marcus added. "Don't forget the riders who were told they didn't belong." As darkness settled over the Callaway Chen Training Center, lights came on in the main house and the stables, creating pools of warmth in the gathering night. Inside, May was preparing dinner while Emma arranged books for the educational library they'd established. Outside, Phoenix and Tempest made their way toward the stable, drawn by the familiar routine of evening feeding. "We should head in," Marcus said, rising and offering Alexandra his hand. "Big day tomorrow with the youth program starting." She took his hand, feeling the calluses earned through decades of holding reins. What had begun as competitive respect had deepened into professional collaboration, then personal connection, and finally something neither had been looking for, but both had found partnership in its truest form. As they walked toward the house, Alexandra glanced back at Phoenix, the mare who had defied all expectations, who had taught her that limitations existed primarily in the minds of those who imposed them. In finding a new path forward for Phoenix, she had discovered one for herself as well. And in joining their paths together, she and Marcus had created something that would outlast any victory streak, any medal, any record. They had pioneered a vision of horsemanship based not on dominance, but on dialogue, not on conformity, but on character. It wasn't just Phoenix who had made history. It was all of them, together, rewriting a story as old as the ancient partnership between human and horse. A story of mutual respect, shared courage, and the transformative power of second chances.